Hi, I'm Shelby Thompson, and this is my school law case study, internet use violations. So to start off with, we're going to identify what we know. We know that the school is an affluent neighborhood. All of the kids have access to technology in some way, shape, or form. We also know that the principal has been elected Principal of the Year. We also know that Mrs. Tate is a new teacher at the school. She has received her master's and hasn't had very much classroom experience. But the three things that I thought were the most important to point out of what we know is that Mrs. Tate's students were frustrated with her, and she's causing stress within that class about her instruction and grading practices. Also, we know that someone has tipped off Mrs. Tate to threatening comments about her online, and those comments are making her feel unsafe, and she has speculated that it's William Hall who has been the one to leave the comment because of past classroom incidences. I feel like all of these three things are important to point out because they're the big highlighted issues within this case study. I think these are the things that we really need to focus on when we're identifying the things that we do need to know, which is next. What do I need to know? The first thing that I ask myself is what can I lawfully do as the administrator in pursuing this issue? Um, Other questions that go along with that is, are there any board policies for social media use? When was this comment made? Is there a timestamp? Was it during school hours or was it out of school? And if it's out of school, what jurisdiction do I have as the administrator to pursue this issue? And then that leads me to another question of what I need to know is, does the school issue devices that students get to that they can get on the internet too, like iPads or laptops? So if it was a school issued device, I think the school or the administration would have a little bit more leeway of what they could do jurisdiction wise of monitoring those devices and things like that. So those are the big questions that I ask because I think that there's a lot of gray area with social media usage and school regulations outside of school. So this leads me to the steps. Oh, no, sorry. This is identifying the problem. Miss Tate is having problems connecting with students and creating meaningful relationships. To me, that's the first problem that that the administration should be proactive about first to negate this problem from happening. It did happen, so Miss Tate feels unsafe after seeing the Facebook comment. That is a problem because as the administration, we need to make sure that our teachers and students feel safe within our building. And then the third problem is there is a gray area of what implications can happen due to the lawfulness of the situation. So as a school administrator, what lawfully can we do to pursue this issue? Can we discipline? Can we dig deeper? What are we allowed to do under the law? Okay, so this brings me to my steps to address the problem. The first one is lawfulness. And what I would do is I'd look up school board policies about social media use first. Then I'd research similar cases. I did research some similar cases, and the Taylor Bell case stuck out. It was a court case involving a student, much like what had happened in this case study. The student had made a YouTube video rap, and it was threatening to two teachers. It kind of insinuated that two male teachers had been sexually harassing students. So with that court case, it is still up in the air what that decision is. So based on that court case, I think there'll be a lot more research available after and more solid lines drawn after that court case is heard. The next thing that I would do is contact the school lawyer or the SRO to get some opinions about, okay, what can we do legally in this situation, that kind of thing. My second step would be communication. I would consult the technology director and I would show him the emails and the Facebook post just to say, hey, can you figure out when this was? Can you see where the email may have originated? That sort of thing. The second person I would talk to is Miss Tate. Just kind of what could we have done to prevent this? Make sure she's having genuine reflections about what's going on in her classroom, and so she can learn from this and be like, what was your role in this issue? And then next, I would talk to William Hall about his relationship with Miss Tate. I wouldn't accuse him of those things happening. I might tell him, depending on my relationship with that student, I might talk to him about how things are going in the class, his relationship with Miss Tate within that class, and then maybe have a sit down with with Miss Tate and William Hall about how can we better this relationship between you two so that you both benefit within this classroom and there's learning going on. Okay, and then third would be my follow through. I would help Miss Tate improve pedagogy with professional development and possibly an improvement plan based on her reaction or the conversation we have with in step two. I think that that would be important because she doesn't have a lot of experience within a classroom. She does have a lot of content knowledge, but she does not have very much experience with students. So we need to have her shift from using that content knowledge and creating relationships with students, because students are not going to learn from someone that they don't like. Second, based on lawfulness, I would hand out discipline, or I would dive deeper into the issue, because I have to figure out as an administrator, what can I do to not hinder students' rights? Making sure that I'm under the law and policies that have been created. If I can't go any farther, then the communication piece is where it would stop. If I can go farther based on what I can legally do, I would, just to question students and making sure that we're having conversations about social media posts live forever. So you're posting these things and saying these things, and that might hurt you down the line when you may look for employment or things like that. And then the third thing in the follow through is I would reflect on how I could have prevented this situation from happening as the administrator. There should have probably been some steps taken to prevent this in the first place. I know in the case study that there were some steps to address Mrs. Tate's classroom style management things going on. But also, I could have talked with students, given them some stress reliever types of things, showed her point of view. Miss Tate is trying to show you how hard you can work, and is trying to make it tougher on you because she believes you can do it, those kinds of things. So as an administrator, it is my job to bridge the gap between the students and the teachers if there is that disconnect. Okay, so next, I want to make sure that I resolve the issue based on promoting the success of all the students, not just William Hall in this case. So students are struggling in Mrs. Tate's class. She needs to have more professional development. I think some teachers think that if they make their class as difficult as possible, then they're teaching well. And to me, that's not the case. Relationships are so important. especially in secondary or and until you get to post-secondary school, because that is their time to practice and learn from their mistakes. And so I would want to make sure that I promote students' academic success within her classroom by giving her more professional development so they can succeed in her classroom and she can still have that high rigor, but also have those great relationships so that the kids know that they can do it. Um, because if you just give them high expectations and high rigor without that encouragement, it's going to feel stressful and like they're bullying and something that they're not ready for if they haven't had that yet. Two, I would make sure of lawfulness in proceedings to protect the student's rights. I want to make sure that I'm following policies so that I'm not violating the student's rights. Because if that social media post is outside of school, there is an area where I, as an administrator, cannot do anything because it is outside of school. Third, I would have conversations with students instead of accusing them of actions to promote the well-being of every student. As administrator, there's some administrators who take the authoritarian approach and don't value student conversations. I feel like sometimes I could be overgeneralizing, but I think that if you want to promote students, you have high expectations for them and you have relationships, caring relationships with them, so you can have those conversations with them to promote their well-being and to practice having good communication skills and relationships with other people who care about them. Okay, so what I was thinking during this case study is I was thinking there's a lot of gray area in regards to out-of-school social media regulations for schools. It depends a lot based on, okay, what device is it on? Was it during school hours? Not school hours? So there, it depends on the school and what policies are in place a lot of times. So if there's no policy in place, there's probably not a lot that can happen. Second, I was thinking I need to protect students and teachers' safety. Not only do I need to protect a teacher who feels unsafe, and I need to make sure that I check into this to make sure that it's not a real threat and that somebody is just messing around, but I need to make sure that she feels safe within the building. That's first and foremost. And then second, I need to make sure that I protect the student's safety by not violating rights within that lawfulness, but also making sure that that student's threat is not a threat, like that they were joking about it, but also so they know that those things are taken seriously. Third, I was thinking that Miss Tate needs to fix her issues with students. If she had good relationships with her students, then this probably would have never happened. So if she can deeply reflect about this issue and say, okay, I did share some part of this, then she can fix those issues with students and not have to worry about these things happening again. Feeling. I feel Miss Tate needs to see more value in relationship building. Because then she would learn and be able to fix those issues she has with her students. Two, I feel students should know how to interact on social media. It's easy to hide behind social media and the anonymousness of social media. And even though it's easy to do that and say what you want to say anonymously, there's still ways to track it back to people. And students need to know that so that it doesn't reflect badly upon them in their future. Third, I feel students should have a teacher who they like so they can better learn. So that is another reason why I feel like Miss Tate needs to take some ownership within this issue, and she also needs to have some kind of professional development within this issue. Valuing. I value the relationships of teachers and students. I think I've said that a bunch, that if the relationship was there between Miss Tate and her students, this issue would not have happened. Because I think there would have been a conversation first between Miss Tate and whoever was frustrated in her class. But since there's not that relationship of communication, I think that it led to an escalated issue. Second, I value the access that students have to technology. Students should be able to access technology, and I think that it's great that they live in an affluent area that everyone has access to technology, because that is going to benefit those students in the future when it comes to college readiness, career readiness, and things like that. There's other places that don't have that access to technology, and they struggle because of it, and I feel like that is unfortunate. Third, I value the policies set into place with this situation and being able to consult with others. I think when there is gray area, you should consult with others so that way you can get more information to better your decision making. The more information you have, I think the better your decision making can be. Um, and also, if there's policies set into place, that makes your job a lot easier, because you can just say, it was in the policy right here. This is the policy we have on this. This is what happens. And sometimes there's not those policies in place. So that's why I do value those. Or there is gray areas in those policies. And when there is those gray areas in the policies, that's when you need to consult and get as much information as possible. Next, some unresolved or further investigation that needs to happen. I think policies in regards on how to handle out of school social media issues. I think that once some of the court cases happen, like the Taylor Bell case, there will be more of a hard line set in the sand of what schools can and cannot do on out of school social media issues. But I think for the most part, as of right now, there's not a lot that schools can do legally with out of school social media issues. There are schools that do things, but I don't know how. I think they work through some loopholes to get through those things, such as, okay, devices, school hours, things like that. The second thing, Miss Tate will receive professional development, but will that change her attitudes towards students? Just like the saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And so hopefully this situation opens Mrs. Tate's eyes to show her that, okay, so I'm doing something that is making these students act out and threaten my safety. What can I do to resolve that issue? And then the third would be discipline for the individual who is threatening Miss Tate. There may not be any discipline that can happen because of the legality of the issue. As an administrator, your hands may be tied in that issue, but if there is a way to discipline or have a conversation about what had happened once you figure out who that student is, then I think that's a great way to talk about social media usage and how can we better resolve this issue so that you the student don't get into further trouble by threatening a person and having to face legal actions such as a lawsuit or something along those lines. Okay, and then integrity. I need to make sure that as an administrator, I'm addressing integrity, fairness, and ethics. So in this case, I addressed integrity by making sure to consult similar cases and seeking advice as well. So I'm being honest and having integrity about not knowing what all I can do. So I'm leaning on others and making sure that I have as much information to make an informed decision so that students' rights are not breached or violated. Next is fairness. I want to act fairly by not accusing students just based off of Miss Tate's statements, but as well as not diminishing her concern. So I need to make sure that I am being fair to both sides. Yes, I'm addressing Miss Tate's concern, but I'm also not just going off of what she says and giving that student a chance to explain themselves as well. So I'm being fair in that manner. Next is ethics. Um, I am being ethical by giving Miss Tate more resources and so she can create better students so she can be more successful and so that we don't have these kinds of issues happening again. I feel like this is being ethical because I'm giving a teacher more tools so that she can better do her job. I used Slides Carnival for this presentation, and I really enjoyed this case study and looking at this. Um, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.